All right, so y'all check this out. This is something very new to me in the logging world, and I said this yesterday in a video. Logging is ever evolving, and this is probably one of the most evolutionary things that has happened to logging in the last 100 years. What y'all are doing.
Yep.
So, tell us who you are.
So my name is Bruce Skirdall. I'm with Summit Attachment and Machinery. We're based in Kelso, Washington, close to an hour north of Portland. And we build specialized logging machinery, most of it with winches or involved with winches in one way or another.
So basically what he's talking about right there in just regular loggers terms, tethering machines, cutting ground, logging ground that was inaccessible any other way doing it, and y'all are providing a way to do it very safely, very efficiently too now that y'all developed. And so what we're going to do, they've got some machines here, and we're going to flip the camera around right here. So y'all see the link belt right there. So he's got a winch that comes down on the front of it right there, and you see it goes all the way up to the top right there, and there's a monster winch on the back of it that actually hooks to a machine and will let it go down the hill and bring it back up the hill or mountain or whatever it is. So we're gonna, I guess probably the best thing to do is start at the back of the machine, and then we'll work forward. That's what we're gonna do. So y'all hang tight just a second. So I see this is a 4040 link belt. What's this machine weigh right here normally?
Equipped as it is right now is about 95,000 pounds.
That's not, I figured it would have been a little bit more than that. But y'all look at the winch spool on that beast right there.
So this is a Landtech 540, which is a winch built in British Columbia. High performance, got a variable displacement motor. Full drum line pull is about 40,000. Bare drum is about 80,000 pounds. This drum holds just under 2,000 feet of 1-inch rope. 2,000 feet of 1-inch rope. And the rope we use is called Power Pack. So it's swaged. It starts life as 1.25-inch rope, and it's run through a press down to 1.125", and down another press down to 1 inch.
Okay.
So it's got catalog brake strength north of 160,000 pounds, and in an application like this, you'll get easily 2,000 hours of operating time on it.
Really? So it'll hold up that long?
It'll last a couple of years.
Wow.
If not longer. We have a data logger, electronic data logger, that keeps track of high line pull events. So you can tell if your rope has been overstressed. Also back here you can see a little pigtail hanging out.
That's right. I noticed that on another machine up there.
So this pigtail is like a dead man on a jet ski. If it's tied off to a stump or what have you, or
a weight or anything a good log or anything here on the ground.
And if the machine moves, it shuts the whole system off, and the operator that's in the cutting machine has to come up and figure out what's going on.
So if the machine goes down the hill or the rear end comes up far enough or anything like that, it completely shuts it down, and then you got to.
On this side, we've got a compartment where our valving and controls are. We come off of both pumps, feed the hydraulic oil into the valving. There's a variable displacement motor up here that gives you good line speed. You can tether a tracked cutting machine or a wheel skidder.
And now this machine here, when you set it up on top of the hill, it's sitting here without an operator in it too, right?
Correct. So when you're tethered cutting, what we do is you'll have a tracked machine like a Tiger Cat 855, a Tiger Cat 830, a Cat 522, an L-Tech, any number of cutting machines, John Deere, what have you. And we put sensors in the travel circuit so that as the operator steps on the pedals to go forwards and backwards, it sends a radio signal up to this machine, and it powers the winch in or out with a preset tension. So it's all automatic. The operator just steps on the pedals of the machine and the winch follows him, kind of like an inertia reel on the seatbelt in your car.
Right.
And there's a very high performance radio system. It's a military spec radio that was developed for special forces that's essentially a non-line of sight radio. So when you have a cable that's 2,000 feet long, most of the radios are 1,000-foot radios. Our radio is actually a non-line of sight.
So you can actually have this one sitting back over a hill, and where it's not out of sight, and it'll still work and function.
Still work.
Wow.
And it's much more difficult to transmit a video signal than the signal controlling the winch, but we still get good video signal as well. There's a camera on the machine, so that anytime the operator operates his travel on his cutting machine, it switches to the camera, so he watches. He has the ability to watch the winch operate and the area around the machine operate, just to make sure everything is operating like it should.
Okay, so there's a camera sitting up here on the machine, looking toward the back of it.
Back and you can see it up on top of the cab.
Oh yeah, I see it right there. Yeah, on the ram mount up there, and so.
Yep.
So he's got a screen inside his cab that's down the hill tethered.
Correct.
And so he can see what's going on up here, whether his line has got crossed up or anything like that.
And in fact, that screen is actually an iPad, an Apple iPad.
Okay.
And the main purpose for that screen is they will put the live GPS harvest map directly on that iPad, so the cutting operator can zoom in and out. He sees the contour lines, the roads, the boundaries, and he draws in the skid trails of the skyline pass, and he can cut and pile the wood to the skid trail.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just cutting the trees, he's moving the wood and preparing it to go up the hill.
Gotcha. Wow, that's pretty dang cool. So he's almost like some of the spraying stuff, the way that they color in the map when they're spraying from the air and stuff like that, kind of the same situation. Amazing what you can do with the iPad and stuff like that, and the apps that are available. And so
we extend the stick up about 10 feet, and up on top there's a shiv, and that shiv has an electronic load cell in it. So we measure actual line pull on the cable, and that feeds back through a Parker ICANN computer, so that no matter what layer of rope you're working on, whether it's bare drum or full drum, we program a maximum line pull, and let's call it maximum of 40,000 pounds, so we don't overload the cable or the whole system.
So it is load sensing up there on top of that, at the very tip top up there then. And so this thing is, the communication of it is mind-boggling.
There's also a counter on that, so the operator in the cutting machine, he has a display of what the actual line pull is at all times, and it also has a count telling him how far down the hill he has, how much line is left on the drum. So
what is the, or say I all of a sudden got a wild hair and I said, I want to buy one of these things. What is the learning curve on this? If I bought one and wanted to hook it to one of my machines, is it just something that I can come online pretty quick with?
If you've got some experience with a cutting machine,
right?
If you're an experienced cutting machine operator, you will get in the cab, and there's almost no learning curve. You've got a touch screen. So you just hook the cable to it. You just hook it to it, and you just take off. Turn on and go. And we have a couple of modes that you can work in, but from a basic operating standpoint, it's basically invisible to the operator. But what it makes and when you're cutting, you can cut on 100% plus slopes. So
holy cow.
Typically you're going to stop cutting with a cutting machine on maybe 50%.
Right.
That's where these start. And we tell people it's a winch assist machine. You're not supposed to hang off a cliff with it, but we have operators working well beyond 100% slope. And what it makes the cutting machine feel like is the operator in the cab feels like he's on flat ground, because the hitch on the cutting machine is mounted low and the shiv on the machine is mounted low, so the rope is to the ground, and so it's
pulling down, sucking it to the, like it's magnetized to the ground.
Correct. And in fact, Oregon State University recently did a study where they put sensors in the ground and then drove tethered and untethered machines over the sensors, and they showed how even on a very steep slope you're getting even distribution of weight and traction, if you will, once you're tethered, whereas on a steep slope you expect that your whole load of the machine is, when you're untethered, is maybe the last 2 or 3 track pads. So it plants the machine, so even if you're grabbing a log, swinging 180 degrees, the machine just is planted. We've had many operators, experienced operators, tell us there is no way I'm getting in that machine on that cable. And they get in the cab, and after about a half an hour, they climb back out of the cab with a big smile and say, don't you ever unhook me from that cable, because it just makes the machine feel planted, and it gives them a much more comfortable operating.
So can this machine function and do the work the winch at an idle, or is it running wide open to run?
When it's in the tether mode, you'll set the throttle at about 3.
Okay.
And the way our system works, when you're going out, well, in the normal mode, when you're going out, you're releasing the brakes and just pulling the drum backwards against the brake and the motor, which generates 7,000–8,000 pounds of tension, and that's how most people operate. And when you're in that mode, the engine is idling, and the only time the engine is working, coming up on the fuel pump, is when you're coming back up the hill and the winch is pulling. Now we have a constant tension mode. Again, just go to the touch screen, push a button, and you're ready to go. And then you dial in a line pull, 10,000, 20,000, and now the winch is pulling all the time. When you're in the normal mode, this machine will burn 8, maybe 10 gallons of fuel a day when you're cutting all day long.
Wow.
Constant tension mode, it'll burn more.
So it's very efficient.
Very, very efficient. And consequently, we've rigged a lot of machines with 8–10,000 hours, and after 5 years, they've done nothing to the machine other than maybe an oil change. These machines also have a high engine temperature sensor added, a low
so it's kind of
pressure.
got like a Murphy system in
Correct,
it, basically, where it'll shut it down if it needs to.
Correct. And it has a low hydraulic oil level on it, so that if anything goes wrong with this machine, it shuts off, and the operator has to come back.
All right, the big question here that everybody's going to want to know, and you may or may not be able to answer this or whatever, but and it don't have to be exact, but and I would like to know too, kind of a ballpark price on a system like this right here you're looking at.
So our part of it, taking the counterweight off, putting the winch on, valving, controls, shivs, load cells, everything we do, plus rigging all the electronics on the cutting machine, is $305,000 to $310,000.
That's not as bad as I thought it would be.
In addition to the base machine. But a lot of the used machines, you can buy a nice Cat 330 used excavator for under $100,000.
But I bet
work fine for this.
I bet what you can cut in a year's time, though, what you can get out of some of these holes and steep ground that you normally would have to hand fell and put a guy in danger, and then do all of that, and then still have to get it with a yarder, kind of tricky getting it.
So here's the deal: when you have the ability to cut with a mechanical machine on a steep slope, you can swing that wood, and because you've got the live GPS harvest map, you draw in the skid trails and skylines. Yes, sir. And you swing the wood to the skyline, and everything is arranged, ready to go up the hill. And now you're yarding or skidding, your productivity goes up by a factor of 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times.
Because everything's laid out perfectly.
Now, cutting with a winch assist system is oftentimes more expensive than hand falling. But here's a couple of things that make it more attractive. Number one, safety.
Right.
In Oregon, workman's comp for a hand faller is oftentimes $30 an hour per man.
And you just take that man completely out of it right there.
Well, this cutting system typically replaces at least 4 men, sometimes as many as 6. So, plus, any weather condition, you can cut timber and not just cut it down, pick up sticks willy-nilly, but cut it down and swing it and pile it under the skyline.
Let's walk over here toward the bucket over here. All right, so I see you got 2 clevises here with this in the bucket.
So what we do is we take the cables from the sides of the bucket and we attach them to the lugs on the car body.
So it won't pull
so when you're parked on the hill, it takes all the load off your stick cylinder. And this machine is planted rock solid.
So you take the bucket and curl it out a little bit and then stick the teeth in the ground?
You can, but you really don't have to.
You don't have to? Okay.
Some people are concerned and they turn the buckets around and dig into the ground. what you're most concerned of is taking the load off the stick cylinder,
Right.
so the machine can't scoot.
So you're just pulling against the car body then, is
Correct.
all that you're doing.
Correct.
And of course, with this right here, you're taking a lot of stress off of things with the pulley right there on the.
It can swing side to side, so
Yes.
you can pull at different angles. The chain is here. The bridle chain is here. It's what ties to the cutting machine. And the main reason it's there is a lot of times you need to be able to pick that chain up and move it with your cutting tool.
Right.
And you don't want to nick a wire. So the chain is there just kind of to be a little more rugged if you've got to pick it up with your cutting.
So typically, when the cutter makes this pass down and he comes back up, does that operator jump in this machine real quick and move it over to his next swath?
On
And
longer strips, yes. If a guy's cutting short strips, only a couple hundred feet, it actually makes sense to have an operator in this machine, because it takes 5-10 minutes to jump out of a machine, move,
Right.
reset. Whereas if you're making longer strips, maybe 600-800, 1,000 feet, now the machine is sitting long enough that it doesn't make sense to have a man in it.
I got you. Wow, this right here is just some cool stuff. I want to one day go to a site and be able to film, put some of my cameras in cab and stuff like that. And even if they would allow me to operate, because I run an LX 830, and do some cutting with
tomorrow?
it. Shoot, yeah. You got somebody close by?
Probably.
That would be cool.
We might see some people this evening. I'll ask.
That would be cool and everything. Well, you just made my hair stand up, man, because I am an equipment nerd, man.
We have nearly 60 of these machines out around the Northwest.
Holy smokes.
And quite a number of them working within an hour of here.
Wow. So I hope y'all kind of understood that, got the lowdown on all that stuff like that, and very cool for me to get that information. I appreciate you talking to me, man. That's very, very cool. And
now, the one thing I will say is, when a lot of people look at winch assist, they think that the winch assist cutting is the be-all, end-all. But in reality, what's happening is, by being able to cut on steep slopes and pick that log up and arrange it, now what we're doing is dramatically improving the safety and productivity of the yarding process. Whether it's skidding it with a rubber-tired skidder or yarding it with a cable logging system, you will dramatically increase the safety and productivity of the entire system. So even working in steep slopes, you can have a fully mechanical cable logging, cut, yard, process, and load system. Everybody's in a cab. Incredibly efficient. Where you used to have 6, 8, even 10 men, you've got 4 doing much more work in a day.
well, Mr. Bruce, I appreciate you taking the time, man, and let me talk to you, man. Very, very cool. It's
Glad to help.